Hello everyone, and welcome to Tangent Time. And today, I am going to talk about Rings of Power Season 1. Now, this TV show is very controversial. Everyone likes shitting on it. I honestly don't think it's like the worst bit of television on the planet. People are just been overstating it. It's bad, but it's not like the worst thing that's ever existed. And it's done some things that are good. I could go into detail on a lot about these things, but I know there's a bunch of law channels and a bunch of TV shows that actually go into depth about these sort of things. So I just kind of want to go with my dot points and the reason why certain things I liked and certain things I didn't like. That's all I kind of want to do. Why? Who knows? Internet cloud for the one or two people that eventually watch this video. Hi. So yeah, this show has severe pacing issues, like really bad pacing issues. Two, most of the plots, of story plots, are straight up just boring, just boring to watch. And when they start getting interesting, it's just literally the end of the season. You're like, there is slow burn, there is slowly building up, and then there's whatever the fuck this is. It's just bad, just period. There's a terrible sense of scale and no sense of urgency in nearly any of the scenes, and they basically write a lot of the like characters in a way that like they're really intelligent, and then randomly, because they need to do this or need to be in a situation, or the scene needs to exist, everyone's just start hitting with a fucking stupid bat, and you're like, Game of Thrones, fucking PTSD is hitting in fucking strong right now. And then there's a few law changes in this that I really fucking don't get. Like, the reasons why they changed it is to like give more agency to some of the plots, but it didn't really do much. It didn't do it, and it was bad. A lot of the changes that they like, some of the major changes that they did, which I'll basically go into immediately because I'm going to talk about the elves. But by fucking god, it was infuriating. When I heard it, I was just like, you what? So yeah, let's fucking go into it. Elves. The elves do not feel like elves. This one's actually a difficult one because realistically, the primary four elven characters that we really see: Elrond, Gil-galad, Celebrimbor, and Galadriel. These are the four characters, right? The first three, Elrond, Gil-galad, Celebrimbor, kind of feel like an elf. Galadriel does not feel like an elf. Every other fucking elf that you see on screen does not feel like an elf, except for the black elf that exists on the Southlands. I kind of like him. He's a good character until a point where he becomes dumb. But I'm gonna just bring up the mithril point first, because this kind of brings into everything. Lord of the Rings timeline, there's a lot of wacky stuff, but the core premise of it, just for the point of this, there was darkness on the planet, and then there was the trees. First, two trees that functionally exist in Elf Heaven, Balor, or whatever, right? And then after the trees got eaten by a ginormous fucking spider, that Melkor, the first Dark Lord that we kind of hear in hints and stuff like that, and then that was the entire plot. And then Age of the Lanterns, and then I think so, I forgot what happened in between, and then Feanor and Fingolfin or whatever, like the Noldorian princes and stuff like that, after their father, the first High Noldorian king. All these are just name shitting. You don't have to pay attention to them. All you need to know is that the first fucking Elven king and all of like his sons and stuff like that went over to Middle Earth after a lot of kinslaying, aka high elves killing each other. That is when the first age starts, and when the sun appears, and then the second age, which is currently kind of where we are, and the third age where Lord of the Rings happens, right? War of the Rings. So what you got to know is that Galadriel is like 14,000 fucking years old, roughly from memory. I don't know, like just she is several thousands of years old, because she's a Noldorian. In this, there's three types of elves, basically simplified. There's the guys and girls that know the light of the tree. For contextual, Tolkien was a very person that liked to write about religious stuff. Basically, the elves had the light of God in them. And then there were the dark elves, or the gray elves, that never knew the light of God. Gray elves are ones that they were trying to go towards a tree, and then they're like, yeet, fuck this shit. And then the dark elves just were like, fuck this shit from the get-go, right? So, dark elves, Tolkien has a tendency of rewriting random stuff. Functionally, dark elves basically became orcs because they got twisted. That's why we have Adar as a character, and then we have Legolas and Thranduil that you see from Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Woodland elves. These guys, they're gray elves. Weird, right? So in Tolkienian lore, Noldorian elves, the high elves, are the only ones that have the light in them. The other elves do not. They have immortality, but they don't have this pseudo light. This was a made up concept for all these other characters because Galadriel has the light. Celebrimbor should have the light. Gil-galad, I believe, has the light. Elrond does not have the light. They functionally decided to just give Elrond the light for the purpose, right? And they just randomly decided that, like the elves are dying, so we need mithril to live. This mithril basically contains the light of the trees. This is such a contrived, dumb fucking reason to give agency. Like, I really hate this. You could have just simply boiled it down to mithril only. Like, we need a weapon to fight against the forces of evil. We are not as strong anymore. Like the first elves, the high elves, the elves with the light, they no longer are with us. They are all over in Valinor, and they have no interest in helping us in Middle Earth. Create some interesting plots, right? And then they're just like, we need a weapon that can match the weapons of like mass destruction that the enemy has. Grimgol, can you make us something? And then you just put in mithril. It just makes the exact same thing without fucking insulting everyone that enjoys the lore, and without it's such a fucking dumb lore change for literally zero payoff. This mithril thing pissed me off more than fucking anything. To a lot of people that don't know lore and shit like that, they're like, you're just a whingy baby. This is really actually dumb. It's just straight up dumb. It's like if you meet Tyrion's like a sympathetic like alien race, and for just like why, like just why you could, but the question isn't what you could, it's why. The mithril plot is dumb. Goes into the second plot point, which I think is one of the dumbest plot points in this, is Galadriel is a 14,000-year-old elf. She is written like a 13-year-old woman on a warpath, and worse than that, she's written like a 13-year-old woman on a warpath without it ever being shown what she has done. It's just told, which is the worst way to write one of your main characters. It's really weak, it's really bad, and it's really cringy because whenever she tries to do a badass dialogue, it fails to hit because we have none of the context of the reason why she deserves any of those lines. It hurts because I think that there were a lot of like, honestly, Galadriel turning into a gal boss where she just beats shit up and is a monster and then eventually becomes a great queen, powerful queen, perceptive queen. It's not a bad concept idea. More people will still hate it, but it's like to make a character interesting and have their arc, it's not a bad idea in concept. But one, you basically establish this character that she's just like, oh, we had no words for death. I lost my brother. We don't basically give you, we give you like a minute or two for you to establish that you had a brother and that apparently you were close with your brother. And then you became eventually a monster outside of screen by chasing after the person that potentially you believe killed your brother. So by the time scene 2 comes up, we see a woman that is 14,000 potentially fucking years old, because they never tell us the like the ages on or anything like that, because I know most people don't care, but these sort of things actually in context make a lot of things like, but why though? She's a 14,000-year-old woman that just could not fucking get over her brother dying. We did not see any of this, we did not care. 14,000 years or whatever fucking thousand years, so like let's say like from the first age into the second age, she just did a lot of fucking killing orcs. So we just see her just going past. They haven't seen any orcs apparently. And then she just treats her men like assholes. There's a difference between writing a character like an asshole, and there's a difference between writing a character as a murderous fucking monster. Galadriel is written like an idiot and an asshole, not a monster. There are differences. If you had a scene like kind of like where they were like fighting and Galadriel showed a tendency for cruelty against the orcs, like torturing them and like being like speak, and then the orcs just like never, and she just enjoys like, well, I'm glad anyways, and you see her torturing and you see like the anger slash joy in her eyes. If you had scenes like that at the beginning, like a little montage of that shit at the very fucking least, some of her lines is just like, then why is the evil is gone, Galadriel? Then why isn't it gone here? It's like, oh yeah, you were brought in by the tempest. There's a tempest in me. These lines don't hit because we saw none of this fucking build up. Not even in a couple of fucking like seconds. All we've seen is her being an asshole. Just an angry teenage woman, a human woman, that's actually a 14,000-year-old elf. It's just a very frustrating thing to watch. And not to mention, if she's a princess of the elves, she's basically defended by the greatest elf warriors known to like elvenkind, right? And you're telling me that these guys that existed and fought from the age of the trees and then decided to fight in the first and second age war of the jewels, all this sort of stuff. The guys and girls that fought balrogs and then dragons the size of cities and hordes of orcs and urukai. These guys struggled to kill one cave troll. Like I said, scale, urgency, just non-existent. Then these characters, these elves, these great elves are just hit with a you fucking pathetic back because we don't know how to write a story that makes you look cool and has a sense of urgency. It's just lazy writing. You could have literally just made a scene where there was like a horde of like ice trolls coming in and the building was collapsing and the men were defending the position, but they're like, where is Galadriel? And Galadriel's seeing the sigil, and then their second in command's like, we have to go. The men need us. The building's collapsing. And then you have a scene where she just looks and like, look here. We have searched for centuries, and this is the closest that we have forgotten. We are not leaving this trail right here. And then he's just like, you can look for him alone. And he runs back to help the men. And then you see this moment where Galadriel has this little bit of attention where she's just like, and then, you know, eventually they're like, where's Galadriel? She's like, she's not coming. And then you see Galadriel come in, and then she can, you know, all of them can have their Legolas moment, but you can make her extra badass. Then when you get out, just like, we're this close, we can move, keep on moving north. And they're like, well, you can go alone. And all of the men put down their swords. It's like, we loved your brother too, Galadriel, but you are no longer the Galadriel that we knew when we started this adventure. You can make these guys sympathetic, cool, badass, and also make her into the monster that you were trying to display on screen. It's just bad writing. Whoever got Galadriel as a character to write did it bad. The only time she has some amount of good writing is literally episode 8. The final episode of season 1 is the only moment she has good writing, and the only reason why she has good writing is she has some on-screen chemistry of argumentative with Halbrand, who functionally winds up being Sauron. It's really pathetic how she was written. It's really sad. I hope that she is written way better in season 2, because I think they tried to do an arc. It failed miserably. Not to mention, half the time she would turn from I am a monster into humble. You are good. Also, the fight scene where she's like basically like trying to train the men and women of Numenor. Once again, scale just does not exist. So the armies of Numenor marching is whatever. But like, you know, if you were training like all of these men, and like an easy way to make this scene, right, is just to have all the men and women up in line, and she talks to them about how you're supposed to kill the orcs, slay the orcs, all these sort of, right? And then these men, a couple of men and soldiers just snickering. You're like, and she's like, you have anything to say? Share it. And they say nothing. And this is where Elendil comes along. He's just like, well, if you guys are so confident in your skills, if you manage to even touch her, I will promote you to lieutenant. And everyone's like, yeah, let's fucking do this. You see the dudes and the girls just fucking swing their swords, thinking they can easily take an elf, because these are Numenorians, the best creme of the creme, best of the human race has to fucking offer. Fucking small elf woman, what is she gonna do? And she whips their asses. Not in a flamboyant, showy offy sort of way she did. She is a 14,000-year-old grandma. it should the tone of it should have more been an educational thing. I know they tried to do it, it did not hit. It should have been more of just like tuck your thing. Do you know, like your core and your weight distribution is bad, and then she goes up to them straight up, and they're like, "Oh," it's like, you flinched. Do you think the orc would have stopped? Again, and then she just keeps on doing it, and it's like, good, attacking together. That's sort of like group work is what is necessary to like fight in the war. And then she does that, and then she has like a after like everyone's just like going back, and then she's like, but you can be lieutenant. I like the fire. Learn how to be a bit more humble, and you know, something along those lines. And Elendil's just like, but the entire fact that they're not sending trained troops and they're sending young boys into an unknown fucking war, like this is a lot of this writing is just bad, just straight up bad. But like, enough about Galadriel. This is too much about Galadriel. Stella Grimgor is great. He's like really good. He's him crafting the rings. The changes of how he's crafting the rings, I think, is actually good. Good change. Gives a bit of more of a sense of like, I'm interested to what they're going to do with the dwarven rings and the human rings. It's interesting. Saving up for new seasons, it's not necessarily a bad change. Elrond is great, but I will talk about Elrond during the next section, which is about the dwarves. The dwarves are the only well-written like race and culture in this show, just flat out. The only one that is consistent and the only one that is written well. Talk about singing to the rocks and like finding like veins and communicating with the stone and the mountains. These guys feel like dwarves. Their culture feels fleshed out. It's really good. The fact that like the female dwarves do not have beards, I wasn't happy about it. But when I saw it, I'm like, you know what, this change for television is actually pretty good. I think this was a good decision for like the writers. This was a good one. I think it was a better choice. While I'm going into this, there's diversity in this. I think overall, I could go into like an entire tangent about it. The diversity, good. I just think it's good. There's enough racial tensions between a lot of countries, like lately, anyways. Having the younger generation seeing a bunch of diversity on screen, it's not a bad thing. Suck it up. Let the new generation be able to actually learn how to tolerate each other. Deez is actually one of the best written characters in this. Like, yeah, like she doesn't have a lot of screen time, but with every screen time she has, I've never not liked her in that scene. I never not liked her chemistry with Durin or Elrond. My God, some of the first, honestly, the best scenes in this show is straight up Elrond, with a mixture of Elrond, Durin, Deeza, and Durin's father. These four characters functionally carry this show on their backs as like a dwarf should. They're just carrying the entire fucking mountain. They're like just whew. There's so many scenes, Durin and like Elrond, like Durin being pissed off at Elrond about like him not being there because Elrond just doesn't have a concept of time, and Durin's like, I lived an entire lifetime and I miss my friend. That made me tear up. Durin talking to his father, and he's just like, I'm sorry, father. Actually, even before that, Durin being furious about something. I forgot what it was. A mithril. I think the mithril plotline. Don't think about the mithril. But the entire mithril plotline and him mining it, and he wanted to lead his people into greater, like the greater thing. Durin's conflict about wanting to raise his people and give them more riches, and Durin's father just being fine where they are, and that conflict between the new age and like old ways. This is a really good dynamic. And like Durin having that entire scene where he's just like, fuck my dad, all that, and Elrond goes up to him and is like, oh, that scene that made me cry. That one actually I think made me cry. The conversation about my father basically is like one of the greatest elven heroes known to man, and I don't get to ever see him again. And some days, like, you know, like the life that he gave us and everyone else, am I living up to his expectations, or worse, does he see every single way that I have failed him? And then I realized one day, I'm not doing putting the line delivery right now, but like, then I realized one day that it didn't matter, as long as I could have a conversation with him one last time. Fuck the conversations between Elrond and like during just these plot points. It feels like it was a complete different writer that just knew their shit. They knew their lore. I don't think the mithril point. They know their stuff so well that I do not think the mithril plot was their idea. You feel a bit of a struggle. Like Elrond felt his line delivery was until the mithril plot point, and I felt his acting a bit off. I don't know if it was just me, but he felt off, and I feel like even he as the actor, he's a good actor. I think even him knew how dumb of a line this was. But yeah, dwarves were great. It's just some of the best scenes, straight up. Oh, the dad going like, "You have nothing to apologize for." Dwarf scenes were so good. That shit was quality television. Quality television. Like season 1 to 4 Game of Thrones level quality television. By God, we could have more of this. Instead, we got just so much shit. Let's talk about the Numenorians. Numenorians are supposed to be like super soldiers. Like they're fucking the creme de la creme of humanity, and they're basically kind of watered down to. I hate using this line, but it is kind of true. They took our jobs. The elves are better than us, so our inferiority complex is gonna take over. It's such a piss ass fucking way to write these guys. They are like the greatest fucking warriors that men of men. Just write them as great, and then watch the Numenorians slowly get corrupted by Sauron, and watching that corruption seep in deep. But instead, what we get from the beginning is that there is a very strong anti-elf sentiment, and that, I don't know, the way that, actually, it's not even what they wanted. They just, the scale, sense of urgency, lack of military, any amount of fucking thought in their military tactics or anything just made them feel incompetent dumbasses. It did not help that the people were just racist dickheads. The elves, like the elf playing with Galadriel was just straight up one individual bad writing. The Numenorians were just, every one of them was written badly. Like every single one of them was written badly. There's not the guild master. He has a couple of good lines. He was a good actor, and I liked his line delivery, and I liked the way that his plot was going, because we know he's going to become the usurper king that eventually leads Numenor to its destruction. Because like, I won't go too much in the plot, but he's the guy that basically fucks over. He defeats Sauron, and then Sauron basically does a worm tongue, and he really like, you know, breaks his ego. Eventually, this guy's just like, "I like you," makes him his advisor. Upon his death, close to his death, Sauron was like, "Hey, don't you want elf immortality?" And he's just like, "Hell yeah!" Raises a fucking fleet, goes over to Valinor. Only instance where the actual god of this universe is just like, "Fuck you." Atlantis is Numenor, sinks all the ships, and there's like, "Fuck you, humans should never do this. Do you understand me?" That's his plot. I just feel like the fact that they basically start at the point where there is a racial tension is a little bit lame. I really think that it would have been better if you saw this great nation that was very willing to help like the men of Middle Earth, and then slowly watch that corruption seep in, and watch the hatred of, why are we sending our men to help these elves, like these sort of things, like to watch this instead of be already in it, and it's just badly written, and it's kind of weak, and it's just like, once again, it was a law change with no payoff. This was just bad writing, just straight up. Shoving in Erondil and Isildur in this, their plots were just boring. Their plots were just straight up boring. They shouldn't really exist here in the timeline, but even if you did try to justify a reason for them to be in this timeline, they were just written very boring. Isildur trying to do the entire arc of fucking shit kid that eventually becomes the great king. It does what he does. He's just unlikable. He's just a boring, and he's just a bit of a dumbass. He has no redeemable features. The one scene where he was supposed to save his father and redeem himself so that there could be any amount of fucking weight between him and his father having a conversation afterwards was taken by a random ass soldier or someone, and I just don't care. When he died on screen, it was like an actual groan. You are not going to kill off Isildur. This is not a nod to the the viewers. This was just bad writing. This was also a bad choice, and it was also pretty insulting to the viewership. I really didn't like this plot point. I will say the daughter and the son of the merchant dude, the daughter of Arundel and the merchant dude's plotline of like love line is the only love line I actually tolerate or like in this entire fucking show, because the entire thing of loyalist to the elves and loyalist to the humans, and then that Romeo Juliet, both families are different, and then the little tension love line. This is an interesting plot. I like this. I like where it would go. There was no build up for it. We had like 2 scenes. The merchant dude's son is an interesting character until he decided to try to fucking blow up a ship, and that was intense. I forgot about that until this point. This is going to be a 1-hour video, isn't it? Ah, fuck me. Anyways, I'm not even going to talk about it. It's just fucking whatever. The Numenorians deciding to send an entire fucking fleet to help out an unknown king, an unknown entity. They showed that much animosity towards the elves. Unwillingness to fucking help. And now they're gonna randomly help a random southern fucking king, and the justification is, hey, we're gonna get trade, we're gonna get wood, all that stuff from the southlands. We're gonna go into this immediately after, but the southlands is literally a ginormous fucking area, which is functionally all of Mordor, with a population of 1 village. Talk about stakes. You're telling me that we should raise an army, that the grand city of Numenor doesn't have a fucking standing army. We're going to train a bunch of children how to fight in a couple of days and send them out to war for a king with no scouting of the lands of Middle Earth, because they do not interfere with the lands of Middle Earth. They have no fucking clue of what the land looks like, what threats there are, how many people they're going to save, the logistical data. And they're just basically training up a fucking army of children and sending them on a couple of ships to fucking unknown without any scouting? Bad writing. And then the fucking merchant's son basically blows up a ship, and then you're like, oh, apparently it's a vagabond. You're telling me that this queen decided to make a choice to help out these random people because of elf loyalism, whatever the fuck, when she knows that this is a huge amount of people that hate her guts and hate the elves, and they are actively going to help elves, and then a ship explodes in her port, and she does not try to find out who does this before they move out? You're leaving your kingdom undefended without leadership against a guy that tried to fucking usurp the kingdom to some degree, from what I understand, at least this point, that he was rallying the people against, elf loyalists, that there might be an insurgence, and once again, no queen, no person to take care of this shit that she can actually fucking trust in, and took the only fucking standing army that they have. Numenorians are fucking idiots. And then these are the characters that basically have that teleporting across this thing. So they basically teleported across the ocean and then teleported across half of Middle Earth towards Mordor and knew exactly when the orcs were going to hit. It's just Game of Thrones, like season 5 to 8 writing. It was just bad. It was just bummed. The more you think about it, the worse it just gets. So just stop thinking about that. Whatever. Southland's plot line. 1 village is really stupid. There's no fucking pacing. There's no fucking urgency or scale or anything. It's just like, oh, the Southlands are gonna take over. You're 1 fucking village. Who gives a shit? The military. Okay, so they tried to really establish that the orcs are a threat. Like 1 orc really the genre changes and it's like horror, right? This orc beating the shit out of this woman, the healer lady. The more I think about it, I just this show's really bad. The orc basically beats the shit out of this lady, and then Theon basically gets tossed around, blah blah blah. And they basically make an effort to show that these orcs are a threat. And then these orcs just basically become fucking like the Dumb and Dumber. The more you watch them, the more you're like, wow, they're fucking dumb. Like there's a scene where like they're chasing after like this elf and then like the Theon and then like the lady. And then the moment they like leave, none of them start shooting. They just stop shooting their arrows. They were like shooting it during the chase, and then for a solid couple of like a minute or something, they stopped shooting. And then they reach the glaive, and instead of shooting, they're just like bad writing. They go into yeah, there's actually too much shit. There's way too much stuff in this. There's just so much bad. The Southlands is like one of the weakest fucking plot points. The Numenorians is just insulting. The Elves is also insulting. The Southland is just like one of the worstly, like the most terrible written like fucking thing. It's I just don't actually have anything good to write about it. Like just this borderline nothing. The only thing that I remember that was kind of good was at the beginning there was some hope. The elf carried it. The love line between the elf and the mother was non-existent. No chemistry. The chemistry between the elf and the son, having that sort of father-son sort of bond. That line of dialogue where the son's like, "Why are you teaching me how to like do archery?" Theon is just like, "What do you mean?" And he's just like, "Well, like you know, the Southland is basically a loyalist to Morgoth, and you were right. Like we're a lost cause." And he's just like, yeah, like like Theon's just like, yeah, like you heard, you were watching us while we sharpened our knives and like whispered. So why fucking trust us? Why do any of it? Just like because at the end of the day, I did observe, and I saw the people behind those whispers and sharpened knives, and I grew to know them. Half of you did leave, yes, but half of you did choose to stay, and that is why I am. Like, it was a good line. My god, this plot line was really dumb. It just leads to a lot of plot holes and like weird fucking questions. So like, once again, Southlands is just one fucking village. Half their villages just disappear, and then like the population just seems to spike up again randomly. I just like Dothraki horde all over again. Just like they're all dead, and then they just fucking appear again. The Southland is kind of like that, right? And then once they finally like do a ploy to kill a bunch of orcs, I haven't even brought in Adar, but like they kill a bunch of orcs and they decide to defend themselves. A bunch of villages with no military training against a horde of trained orcs decide to defend themselves in a highly flammable fucking village with no choke points. You know in Helm's Deep where they fucking like the Rohirrim like cross the lands of Rohan fully exposed to get to Helm's Deep because them staying in that village was suicide. Even if you like lower that number from 10,000 to a couple of thousand, right? It's still suicide to be in a location that is so open to like arrow fire, siege weaponry, and fire. You're telling me that these villagers decided to go into the most flammable fucking location they could possibly could find with zero fucking choke points. If the orcs or Adar had any fucking intelligence, they just get some fire arrows, just burn them. And if they come out, pepper spray them with arrows. It is super dumb writing to try to make a epic Helm's Deep thing, but with once again, none of the scale, none of the epicness. And the more you think about any of the fight scenes, it's just really stupid. And this is even more insulting because the elf is a soldier. A several thousand-year-old soldier defends to basically let these people defend. Like, he takes a stupid back to his face. And then like there's a bit of a contrived plot line where like the men of the village that betrayed them, they actually accidentally killed them, and then Adar like double crossed them when then the orcs come out. They all fucking pile into the barn or whatever, and then the orcs decide to not intervene for like 5 minutes. They're literally in the village, and then they all just stop moving while we have this impactful scene of this woman leader eating out, and the sun. There's no weight, there is no urgency, and the writing is just shit. The orcs are fucking idiots. And once again, this is the point where the Numenorians just fucking magically teleport their way into the fucking story and start slaying the orcs, and the orcs just stand there like a bunch of fucking idiots and just die for no reason. So by the time like Galadriel does her cool stuff or whatever, I'm like, I don't give a flying fuck. You could literally have soloed every single one of these orcs from the level of fucking stupidity that they have. They're all fucking idiots. They deserve to die at this stage. My god. Yeah, the elf was like the black elves story was interesting. And then it just became boring. Them tunneling to do the entire Mordor's thing. Like, it wasn't great. It wasn't bad. It was just like whatever. But by god, the fact that the elves also, like, a group of like their military men from the Southlands decided to fucking disappear, and the elves choose to do absolutely fucking nothing. It's like, oh yeah, we have to escape to tell them. You're telling me that your military chain of command, if your scouts go missing from a particular region, that the elves wouldn't send another scout team to like figure out what was going on in the area, and if they lost contact, that they wouldn't march their armies there after they know that it is location of Southlanders, the entire fucking reason why they were there to watch over them. It's one of these things that if you just sit down and fucking think about it for a couple of fucking seconds, the story immediately falls apart. Like, by fucking god, you either have a group of elves, Numenorians, or whatever that are complete fucking idiots. Moving on. Halbrand was the only somewhat kind of interesting human character, I guess. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think he was the only really interesting character. He was the only character that had plots outside of view that actually made a point, because his reveal as Sauron was kind of cool. His scene with Galadriel, and Galadriel's only good scene, by the way, was her and Halbrand going through the, I don't know, hypnosis conversation where she sees her brother talking about darkness, going to hell. Well, it's Halbrand. You tricked me. He's like, no. I said I picked it up from a dead man. The sign of that I'm a king. What's actually, to go back, the Southland is basically like being like, hey, you like, this is the king. Yay. What sort of fucking people are like saying yay to taxes? Him and what army? You mean the Numenorians? You basically being like, are we under the Numenorian protection? That shit makes sense. The king? Fuck sakes. This is just like 101 bad writing. Just fucking hell. It's just such bad fucking writing. No agency. Nothing. But yeah, the Halbrand basically having that scene with Galadriel was one of the best fucking scenes in season 1. About it's like you would make me into a tyrant. I would make you like, there were so many good moments. The entire thing is just like, yes, I did a lot of bad, but you said that the past didn't matter, but what we did in the future. There were so many good lines in it. It was such a convincing fucking Sauron villain thing. I was like, well, I can see how he could like talk his way into anywhere. Good acting. Great acting. Him with the Celebrimgor convincing him how to make the rings. This is like the episode 8, those scenes with Halbrand in them and occasionally Galadriel coming in. Peak fucking television there too. That shit was actually fucking good. The Hobbits was straight up bad. Like, I get like hobbits and all that, whatever. The fucking nostalgia baiting was a little bit cringe. The thing that really fucking insulted me was the fact that they did this entire thing is Gandalf Sauron. Fuck you. You just reuse that again and again. The pacing of this show was bad already. The Harfoots then slammed it to a halt. The singing, the design choices, and all that. Most of these things were all good, but with the amount of money you have, that's not a fucking problem. My problem is that it slams the brakes on any amount of movement of the story, especially when your plot is just man doesn't know how to speak. He might be a potential danger. But no, you're a good person. Hurts people. Maybe he's dangerous. And they just do that like 4 or 5 times. I'm like, are you for fucking reals? Are you that lazy that you have no idea how to fucking take this story? You could have literally just taken the Nori's plot point of, I want to go out see the world. There's a few fucking, problems with the Harfoots. And that's not too much of a problem because the Harfoots are dickheads. No one gets left behind. Just stay on the trail until you accidentally do get left behind. Then, whoops. I'm not even gonna go talk much about it because it's just like, you know what? This segment was so fucking lazy that I don't even feel like I have the energy to talk about how fucking bad it was. If they just basically cut to the end where Nori basically goes with Gandalf and goes on an adventure, sort of Frodo, Bilbo Baggins with Gandalf sort of adventure from the beginning, and add the friend. I don't know if the friend's coming, but if she was, that would be entertaining. Oh, the girl does have a good line. Not Nori, the other one, where Nori's just like, where there's head sense and then there's heart sense, and she just goes, there is common sense and then there's nonsense, and I was like, best burn. She has the best burn in the entire fucking first season, flat out. Mint. But yeah, Harfoots are just really unlikable. They tried to like come off. I don't know. They're trying to make some amount of tension or whatever. It just doesn't exist. And the entire like those Sauron like mage ladies that were trying to hail Sauron. It's like, you're telling me that Sauron and Gandalf were supposed to come from the fucking sky? Why did you decide to do that? What was the fucking point of these? To give some amount of agency to the entire Harfoot plotline? There was probably a way to do it, but the Harfoot's plotline was just bad, just straight up bad. It was insulting with the Gandalf, are you not, whatever. Like fucking, I didn't care. I'm kind of more interested in what they're going to take her now, because like her with Gandalf exploring and actually talking about the world. Like this was a golden opportunity to use Nori and Gandalf as like a plot device to move and explore and see the world. Like Nori's like, please take me with you, and Gandalf's kind of like, sure, maybe I can use some company. And then you're just like, oh wow, it's like the men of this place, or the orcs of this place, or the elves of this place. He could have been the what's the word? Explain the lore and the world building of the fucking universe. Whatever. I kept it under an hour. But yeah, honestly, this shows. I just like to end it on the saying that, yep, severe pacing issues. A lot of plots are just straight up boring. No sense of scale. No sense of urgency. Teleporting characters. No thought process on how fighting, military, any of this is supposed to be handled. Law changes have literally no payoff for the most part, out of a few instances. This show sucked. And if you like it, I got no bad feelings against it. This show just actually just sucked. It sucked as a Lord of the Rings show, and it sucked as just a fantasy show. It's just objectively bad. I have a feeling that season 2 probably will potentially pick up. I hope so. Ay, 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 ay. I do kind of wish, I do hope, like, here's the thing though, right? The new trilogy of Star Wars, it was a train wreck. It was bad. If you like it, all power to you. It was fucking shit. 7 was boring at best. 8 was just, it had some of the coolest concepts that Star Wars has ever had. And I admit that, right? It had like, some of the coolest concepts. And it had some of the dumbest. just borderline insultingly bad, and the plot made no sense. It didn't fucking matter. Then 9 came along, and that was such. That one was just the stop it, it's already dead. That meme. It was like one of like it's just bad. Like it's bad. It's so bad that you like if you have to get me, you have to pay me to watch it level bad. I put it on the same level of Birdemic level bad, and it's even worse because of the amount of money they pumped into this. Rings of Power is not Star Wars 9 level bad. It's like Star Wars 8 level bad. It's got some interesting concepts. It's also got some really fucking dumb concepts. Overall, if you shut your brain off and don't think at all, it's relatively entertaining to watch. If you actually stop to think for a second about any of the logical reasons why any of these characters would do what they do, especially in the setting of if they're an elf, dwarf, whatever, outside of actually the dwarves, because the dwarves were originally mostly good at sort of mithril plot point, and that was just more of an elf plot point than the dwarves. Nothing makes sense. And then I stopped giving a shit. And then I stopped thinking about it and watched them. Like, kind of fun. I was like, is this what the writers saw? Not trying to bash them too much, but by God, this was bad. Like, please, 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 please. The reason why I brought up Star Wars is because I hated the fact that there was a director for 7. They took away and changed the director, and then they brought the original director. I get the directors and the writers. You guys need a lot of fucking work to do in the next few seasons. Fucking pick it up, please. You got some good ideas. You've shown that some of your writers and some of your team really fucking know your shit. CGI teams, a lot of these guys, they know their stuff. Fix your shit. Please. The Amazon doesn't kick you out. Redeem yourself for season 2 so we can see how this ends. Regardless of all of this shit that I said, I do want you guys to have a successful thing. Because I do think you guys actually do enjoy Lord of the Rings. I don't think you really care about the source material too much, but I think at the baseline you do want to do a good job. And for that, the mithril, drop that point. I don't know how you would drop it. Yeah. But yeah. Oh yeah, last note. Sauron basically being a human instead of a fucking elf. That was kind of interesting. I kind of liked it. I kind of liked how they took Halbrand into Sauron plotline. It's pretty good. Anyways, bye.